Sun's out. This is what we're training for.
This is
Time.
what life is about,
This
bro.
is about being shirtless. We should dream for days like this. Dream for days like this. To build the aesthetic physique, I had to focus on being as lean as possible and training the 7 aesthetic muscles. You've probably heard the phrase going to the gym only gets your attention from guys and not girls. And that's because people go to the gym and go do squats, deadlifts, and like bench press or some shit, right? And then they'll end up building a shit physique, like a powerlifter physique. If you look at the powerlifters, if you know any powerlifters like Eddie Hall, like Ankh from Diamond Gym, if any of you are in the gym fitness culture thing, you know that all these guys who have like a power lifter physique, this is not an aesthetic physique. It's just like they have lots of muscle mass, but they're kind of fat and they have a stomach, right? I wanted to build a physique that's super attractive to girls and that's like super aesthetic, right? So to do that, I had to build what's called the V taper, right? So the V taper is basically when your shoulders are much wider than your waist, so you've got a good shoulder to waist ratio, right? And to build this V taper, right, it's like the V taper is the equivalent of the hourglass shape on a female, right? So you know how as guys we find like the hourglass figure where it goes like curvy, we find that attractive. Girls basically what they find attractive is the V taper, right? That's the equivalence, right? So to build the V taper, I had to train what's called the 7 aesthetic muscles. So the 7 aesthetic muscles are neck, upper traps, lateral delts, upper chest, abs obliques, biceps, and lats, right? Those are the 7 aesthetic muscles. And basically training these muscles and putting them at the center of my training was what enabled me to build the V taper physique, right? And then of course I then later on included the other muscles like the triceps, the forearms, the legs, whatever, right? But at the center of my training was the 7 aesthetic muscles. So here's how I went about it. Here's how I went about my training. In the first 7 months of my training, I did what's called a lean bulk, right? So I was lean bulking, basically eating lean protein and just rice, right? And then eating that around the clock, in and out 24/7 in the day, eating that and basically putting on lean muscle and not fat, right? So when I was doing this, I was 9.1% body fat, right? So that's like crazy lean. That's like super lean. The influencers that you watch, the David Lade, the Alex Eubank, all the influencers, the Usain, whatever, they're all like 10% body fat, right? I was 9% body fat and I was on a bulk at that time, right? So I did this for the first 7 months. I was just going to the gym, training the 7 aesthetic muscles and eating the right food and staying super lean, right, throughout the whole time. I basically ate rice, lean beef, and like chicken for as long as I can remember. This is basically what my entire diet was. And of course I would have like some carbs before the gym. I would have like oats, or I would have like some sort of carbs before the gym, right? But besides that, my diet just consisted of the lean protein and rice, right? So I did this for the first 7 months and I built a pretty aesthetic physique, right? A physique that I'm very proud of. I was super lean. I had abs like ridges. I had shadows under my shoulders, like I had delts and the shadows under there. I was super impressed with my physique, and after only training for 7 months, right? But the only issue is I wanted to fill out my frame a bit more. I wanted to put on a lot more muscle mass. So what I did after that was I did a bulk. This time it wasn't a lean bulk, it was just a regular bulk, right? So I went on a regular bulk, and in the first 7 months that I've just explained, I went from 154 pounds to 170 pounds, right? That was the first lean bulk that I did, right? So I put on about like 16 pounds of muscle mass in the first 7 months of training, right? But from 170, that's now when I started doing an actual bulk. From 170, I put on about, 20 something, almost 30 pounds, right? 20 something pounds. I went from 170 to 198, right? So like 28 pounds, I think it is, right? And I did an actual bulk at that time. I put on a bit of body fat. Of course, I had all the benefits of bulking, increase in strength. I could go to the gym, always super like energetic because I had the carbs all around the clock. I could lift heavy weights. It was all good, right? I just enjoyed every bit of it, except for the fact that I put on a little bit of body fat, right? Which now I'm on a cut, so I'm just going to shred down, right? But this is how I went about it, right? So I did a huge bulk then, and then now I then filled out the frame, right? So now we're going back to lean is low. We're going back to being super lean, super shredded and everything. But now we've got the muscle mass, right? So we've got a lot more muscle mass than we did the first time we did it, where we just lean bulked. So now it's gonna be a lot better, and the physique, I'm gonna feel it out a lot more, right? So this is basically a quick rundown of what I had done to build the aesthetic physique, right? Now let me explain to you real quick why it's essential to train these muscles that I've previously mentioned, right? Why these are basically the most essential muscles for the aesthetic physique, right? When you have, like, I'm gonna go top to bottom, right? So I'm gonna start with neck. When you have like a thick neck that fills out your frame, right? When you have like a thick neck, it looks more muscular, and not only does it look more muscular, your neck is always visible in anything that you wear, right? So whatever clothes you're gonna put on, anything you're gonna put on, your neck is always out there. And when you have a skinny neck, right, like, even if someone can't see your physique, they can tell that you're skinny. When you have I've had a skinny neck basically my whole life. So neck's been one of the most difficult things for me to improve. I've trained it for 8 months straight, but it's been one of the most difficult things for me to improve. But you can tell now that it's noticeably different from what it was in the previous times. Even when I did my first lean bulk, I didn't really train neck, I just trained the traps. You can tell now it's noticeably different, right? I can feel out the frame a lot more. The neck looks a lot better. Like, it's got some definition in there, and it's like, dude, this, I know this is like, it looks kind of sexual, whatever, showing me my neck, but let's keep it educational, let's keep it professional, watch for educational purposes only. But yeah, so like, the neck, super important, right? Because what you basically want to achieve with this is, you want a neck that's like in line with your jawline, right? So it just goes straight all the way down, right? That's basically the most optimum or the best way to have it. But I just had a skinny neck that was like, it was so skinny that like it would just show that I had no physique and everything, right? So that's super unattractive. So then I had to improve the neck and everything, right? So that's neck. The upper traps are also very important, right? This whole region, basically, the upper trap, the upper chest, and like the delts, this part right here, it's super important that it just looks thick and muscular, right? Because the traps, as I said, they're also visible in anything that you wear, right? Your traps are always out here, and like, people can see in whatever you like, put on a t-shirt, you put on a vest, they can see whether you train or you don't, just because of how large your traps are. These are like super aesthetic as well, so it's really good to train those, right? And then the upper chest, I don't think I need to explain much about the chest, but specifically the upper chest, this is the hardest region of the chest to grow, right? So most people, when they do their workouts, they focus on, like, let's say a flat press, maybe they'll do like a decline press or something, but this region up here is the hardest region to grow, and it's the point where I focused most of my time and energy into growing. Because when you have the upper chest, when it's developed, you get like a nice shape to your chest where it doesn't look like you have like saggy boobies, even though like you've been training chest, right? But it just looks kind of saggy. I can't really think of like influencers or like someone popular with that type of chest. But when you train with flat movements and decline movements, it's gonna have like a saggy effect where your lower chest is like super developed, right? So this part of your chest, it's super developed at the bottom, but at the top, it's not really developed, right? It's just flat all the way here, so it just looks kind of saggy and weird, right? But to have like a full chest, to have that full rounded, blocky chest, right, you need to really train upper chest. It's the hardest to grow and it's the one where you really have to train it, right? But also when you train upper chest, right, the way your chest works is that like the fibers that connect your chest to whatever they're called, the muscles that connect your chest, they run through like this, right? They run through like across your chest. So when you train your upper chest, you're also training like your mid and lower chest, right? So basically training your upper chest also gives you the benefit of training your entire chest, right? But training your lower chest and your mid chest won't give you the benefit of training your upper chest, right? So it's super important to train the upper chest specifically, right? That's why I trained the upper chest to have like that full chest and everything. And I'm still trying to develop my upper chest as well, but I've trained it for like 15 months now and I'm super impressed with the results that I've gotten, especially from having I had a negative chest, right? I basically had hollow chest. So especially from coming to that point, I'm super impressed with like the progress that I've made with that. And then we've got the lateral delts. Lateral delts are super important because they add on to the feet taper second to the lats, right? So the lateral delts, when you have like these rounded shoulders, right? When you have rounded shoulders, it's super what you want is to have like the shadow underneath the lateral delts, right? So I'll show you, like I'll put a picture up there where I'd been training shoulders for a while and I had the shadow underneath, right? I still have it, but I'll put a picture up there. Basically, when you're standing like underneath down lighting and there's a shadow underneath your lateral delts, if you take pictures of that, oh my goodness, you've made it in life. When you have the shadow underneath the lateral delts, it's super attractive, right? Because like the rounded shoulders, like it's super important. They add onto the feet taper, but the shadow is like, I think it's up there with the importance of like the feet taper, right? So of course when you train lateral delts, your frame is gonna become wider. It's gonna add onto the feet taper, like I said, where your upper region will look wider than your waist, so you have a good shoulder to waist ratio, right? That's your lats. Biceps I don't need to explain, but what I do need to explain is that the more you train your biceps, eventually like your bicep vein will come out. Mine only comes out when I'm in the gym, but like when the bicep vein comes out, that's when, like when you just have that on default, it's super attractive. So that's the side point on biceps. And then we have the abs and obliques. I trained abs and obliques throughout the whole time. I know like people don't like training like abs or something, but that's a you problem. If you don't want that steady physique, then don't. But for me, I want that steady physique, so I train the abs and obliques, right? So I've just always trained the abs and obliques. I don't need to explain why these are important. Like abs are super important, right? So we all know that much. Lats are the most important for the feet taper specifically, right? For the purpose of having a wider shoulder to waist ratio, lats are the most important, because the more you train your lats, the more they push your shoulders outwards, the more you have that feet taper physique, right? So lats are super important. Like you just really wanna make sure that you're training these at least twice a week, every single week, right? So that's what I do. I train them twice a week, and then I've been training them for like 15 months, and that's how I was able to have the feet taper physique and build the aesthetic physique. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.